It's nice. You have fans who support. Sometimes you'll hear bad words, but it's normal in sports. In Europe, it's different. You have fans all the time screaming. 40 minutes they're screaming, singing song. It's not like here, more like, how do I say it, a show. People come and eat popcorn, drink beer, eat buffalo wings. In Europe, they come to scream, and they cut your head off if they had a chance.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily podcast on fantasy basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, brought to you by Fantrax, Basketball Monster, and today's show is also brought to you by our Patreon sponsor, and that is Scott Lee. So thank you to Scott for sponsoring the show, and if you want to be a Patreon sponsor, head across to patreon.com/redrock_bball. My name is Josh Lloyd, and you can find me on Twitter at redrock_bball. We're going to talk about a very frustrating day in the NBA on Wednesday, and of course we're going to cover the Rudy Gay injury news that happened in the last game of the night. If you're not aware, Rudy Gay has torn his Achilles, so he is out for the next 12 months most likely. So that obviously does his season in and throws his free agency plans into a significant amount of jeopardy. So we'll see exactly what goes down with that, but I will talk about that when we get to the Kings review later on in the show. So for now,
let's get to it.
All right, so what we're going to talk about first is I thought it would be a good time now before the All-Star starters gets announced for me to, now I have tweeted this out before, but talk about who my All-Star starters would be, and then next week I'll do my All-Star reserves. This is not me predicting who will be the All-Star starters. This is me telling you who I think should be the All-Star starter. So there's obviously a difference because we know that the vote could skew things, and some players are going to get in that I don't necessarily think deserve to get in based on the fan vote and how the coaches and players vote. This is who I think should be the starters. In the Eastern Conference, Kyle Lowry and Isaiah Thomas, with a shout out to John Wall, who's very close behind that. They're the two guards I would have. Lowry has been fantastic this year, and Thomas is on really an historic run over the last month or so, but it's putting up numbers at ridiculous efficiency, as I touched on yesterday's podcast. You're putting up numbers in this current 2-3 week period that nobody has ever done ever before in the NBA for a whole season, so he's on this really crazy run. So they're my two guards. At forwards, the three forwards, Jim Butler, LeBron James, and Giannis Antetokounmpo. That should be pretty straightforward for those three front court positions. In the Western Conference, Russ Westbrook and Jimmy Harden, they're my two guards there. And the forwards, Kawhi Leonard, Anthony Davis, and Kevin Durant. You could make an argument for, I guess you can make an argument for Steph Curry to be a starter in the backcourt there. You can make an argument for Boogie Cousins to be a starter in the front court, I guess. But that's the way that I see it. They're the guys that I have. Please let me know what your thought process is, what your ideas, whether you disagree with me on that or not, who you would have different in your starting five for the All-Star game. Let's talk monstrous line of the night now, and it's Kevin Durant once again. Really, he enjoys playing the Thunder. I think that's fairly clear at this point. 40 points for Durant on 16 shots. That is ludicrous efficiency. He had 12 boards, he had 4 assists, he hit 5 triples, and he added 3 blocks. He was 13 of 16 from the field. Yes, he missed 3 shots for the game, and 9 of 10 from the free throw line. Durant has been ridiculous. He's the number 2 player this year, behind Harden, who's at 1, and Giannis, who's at 2, and Durant is actually number 1 over the last 2 weeks, averaging 28, 8.5, and 4.5. And most impressively, averaging 2.5 blocks a game as well, shooting 58 and 84. Those numbers are out of control. He's got a true shooting of 71. He is just putting up numbers at an insane level, really. And if you took that risk, and there was some risk with taking him early on, there's no risk taking him inside the top 4, but if you were taking him at 1 or 2, it obviously paid off in your favor. And here we are with some big numbers from Kevin Durant once again. So some big stuff from Kev there. The waiver wire line of the night. This is why the NBA can be confusing at times, because Montrezl Harrell, the table, is the waiver wire line of the night. Clint Capella returned in yesterday's game. He started, and Harrell was the third string center. He played limited minutes, under 20, and it looked like, all right, his run is done. This is how D'Antoni's going to go with things. We're going to see Capella at 20. We're going to see 17 or so for Nene, 17 or so for this guy, the table, Montrezl Harrell, that's the way it's going to run. But instead, against the Bucks, we saw Montrezl Harrell get the start. We saw Clint Capella go back to the bench, and Harrell put up a monster line, 12 and 8 with 4 assists, but 5 blocks, 5 of 8 from the field and 2 of 3 from the free throw line. Obviously, he'd been putting up numbers that made him a must-own player while Capella was out. But with this spread, I guess, between the or not spread, the spread of minutes that's potentially occurring, it's really hard to own him. Now, I think that this is still a somewhat fluky performance. He did well still in his bench role yesterday, scoring 13 points, but I don't think he's going to be able to play 27 minutes a night, nor do I think he's going to be able to block 5 shots a night, considering he's never done that before in his career. So that would be somewhat of a long shot to think that happens. So this sort of game comes out of the blue for him. Not really the scoring, but more those block numbers, which really elevates the performance. I still think if you've got someone you want to add in a 12-team league, I don't think there's much reason to hold on to Montrezl Harrell, just because that Capella's going to get some minutes back, and he probably won't play 26, but neither will Harrell, and Harrell needs 25 to 26 to be a must-own guy. And I'm just not sure that he gets back to that level, but obviously a fantastic performance here. And there are going to be nights like this, but there are also going to be nights like we had on Tuesday, where he played 16 minutes. And that's going to be closer to the norm, I believe, moving forward. But obviously, this was a huge performance from the table, Montrezl Harrell. The young gun of the night, it's Joel Embiid. He had 26 points, 9 boards, 2 threes, 2 assists, 1 steal, 2 blocks. He went to the line 14 times, hitting 12 of them. He was 6 of 13 from the field, and he has been ludicrously good this season. Nobody can argue that. He has put up numbers at a crazy level. He is a massive plus for this team. I believe that he's a plus 20 on this team, who has won as few games as they have, and nobody else is even close to being even a 0. He's just everything that this team needs. And on a per-game basis, he's the 22nd ranked player this season. He is going inside the top 20 next year, assuming that all the restrictions are off, which I've got no reason to think that they won't be by next year. You will have to take Joel Embiid in the second round. You might even have to take him in the first round. Maybe that's a stretch, but that's how good this guy is. He's even ramping it up a notch now as well. The last 2 weeks where he's playing 27 a night, he's the 19th ranked player at 22.5 points, 9.5 rebounds, a 3 a game, a steal a game, 2.5 blocks a game, 84% from the line on 11 attempts. So that's like James Harden level free throw percentage impact. That's the sort of impact he's having in that category. Really, really huge numbers from Joel Embiid. And even with the games that he's missed this year, he's still the 64th ranked player based on total value. And that's obviously fantastic. Over the last 2 weeks, he's 18th based on total value. The Sixers are 7-1 in Embiid's last 8 games. They beat the Raptors today. I don't know what more to say about this guy. He can do pretty much everything. His passing has been impressive. He hits threes, he blocks shots, he gets steals, he's a rebounder, he's a scorer. He gets to the line. I don't know what more to say about it. And he can actually improve his field goal percentage as well. So he's got levels to go up from here. Really ridiculous stuff from Embiid. And he's going to be a top 10 player very, very soon, I believe. And he'll be a top 20 guy, almost no doubt, next season. And I just can't see any situation where that isn't the case. Really putting up some they're really insane numbers. And his impact is insane. He's the most fun player in the NBA, I believe, to watch. The crowds in Philadelphia love him, and this whole stuff. I mean, I was very anti the Sam Hinkie resignation last year. I was very it pissed me off to a pretty large degree, and all the people saying, but how can you win if you don't develop a winning culture? The fans won't want to see this. That the players need winners there. It's a load of shit. Really, it's a load of shit. Do you not think that all these kids coming in have not been winners all through their life? They've been that good through all of their youth basketball that they're always winners. You get 2-3 years of these guys in who have always won through it. They don't forget how to win. They get some confidence up and that they fly through it. So this proven winner bullshit is just that. It's bullshit. I'm very much down on experience mattering in a lot of situations. I just don't buy that in most cases. And the play of these guys has been, and look, there's not that many talented guys on this team. Embiid is really cracking at the moment, and Brett Brown's coaching very, very well. So good stuff from the Philadelphia Sixers. Must be fun to be a Sixers fan at this time. The dud of the night goes to Joel's teammate, and that is Noel. Nerlens Noel had just the 5 points. He had 3 rebounds. He had no steals, no blocks, and went just 2 of 6 from the field. He was 1 of 2 from the line. Not a great night from Nerlens. He has been putting up decent numbers, and over the last 2 weeks, he's averaging 1.3 steals and 1.2 blocks, but it's looking more and more like Noel will not get traded, and Okafor will be the guy to go, and that means Nerlens is going to stick in this 20-minute role, which severely limits his upside. So if you own him, I think you still hold on to him at this point, but his upside is obviously fairly severely limited at this point, given the way they're going to run Šarić and Ilyasova at the 4 and Nerlens and Joel at the 5, and it's going to be 28-20 minute split pretty much, and that's just going to be the way it goes for the rest of the year. So Nerlens is going to be stuck in that zone, and I don't really see huge upside for him moving forward. It's fine. It's fine for 14 teamers. It's probably fine for 12s. But 10-team leagues, I'm not really. I don't really 100% feel it as him being an absolute. Oh my god, I've got to own this guy. He has to be owned, sort of a situation. But I wouldn't be just giving up on him just this point. It's a scenario to monitor, I guess, is probably the best way that I can phrase that. All right, that is all of the action from those games. Now we will move in and we will talk about the games in a little bit more detail. The first one of those games we'll talk about is the Philadelphia 76ers. They hosted Toronto Raptors and got a big win, 94-82. We will start with the Raptors, and we start with Kyle Lowry, who returned from rest. He had to play 40 minutes. These minutes are going to catch up with him at some point. 39% from the field, 24, 4 and 4, 5 steals, a block, and 3 triples, and he is still somehow shooting 50% from the field over the last 2 weeks, including this performance. But these are the sort of, look, this is still a really good performance, and it's still encouraging, but we've seen him drop a little bit from what we saw earlier on, where he was this top 7, top 6 guy, and that's the regression that I said coming. That's when I was talking about selling high on Lowry. This is the sort of numbers that I think you can expect. The 5 steals is high, obviously, but this is the numbers that you can expect. So that's 15 to 25 sort of range, not a 5 to 10 range. So a sell high would be getting a top 10 guy back, not getting a top 20 guy back, which is, that's sometimes when I say things that maybe gets a little bit confused in that sense. DeMar DeRozan played 38 minutes. He had 25, 3 and 6. There was some chance he was going to get rested, but he played through it. And Jonas Valanciunas played 30 minutes, going 10 of 16. We had a surprise sprung on us by the Raptors. The surprise wasn't that Patrick Patterson was out. The surprise wasn't that Bebe Nogueira was out. It was that Jared Sullinger was back. Now, he was back, and he was large. Sullinger was large and in charge in this game. He played 14 minutes in his debut for the Raptors, regular season debut. 8 points and 3 rebounds on 4 of 10 shooting, and he was 0 of 1 from the line. But he did look active. He was grabbing rebounds, and as you'd expect, a lot of questions coming through. Do we grab Sully? Do we grab Sully? I think given the fact that he is probably the size of a small dwelling at the moment, he's going to take a little bit of time to get his legs under him and to play 25 to 26 minutes. And if he plays 25 to 26 minutes, where does he come in? Maybe the 100th best guy? 110th? And that might take 2 to 3. So is it really a superb ad to hold on to a guy who's got value as the 120th best guy when he fully gets going? That's the way that I'd be looking at it. Now, there's obviously issues with Bebe being out and Pat Patterson being out. Those guys will be back soon. But it's going to take Sullinger a little bit of time, I would guess 2 weeks, to get back to those mid-20s minutes. But I don't really see Sullinger coming in, playing 31 and being a top 70 type of player. So that means that, in a 14-team league, that is great value there in Sully. But in a 10-team league, no. In a 12-team league, I guess it really depends who you drop in that sort of a scenario to see if he's going to be worth it. But I just think it's going to be an arduous process for him to actually return value that's great. I just don't see it happening. Damari Carroll got kneed in the head by Pascal Siakam. He's dealing with a sore neck, so it looks like he's avoided any serious injury. He lasted 23 minutes and was scoreless on 0 of 6 shooting. He's not good. 2 steals, but he had been playing better, so I would be okay holding on to him because he had been playing better. Now, if he has to miss time, it's going to be Terry Ross, who played 31 minutes here, and Normie Powell, who played 18, that get the bulk of those. Powell had started all of the games that Carroll had sat so far this year. In this game, Normie Powell had a 1-1, and he went 5 and 3, while Terry Ross had 8 and 6 with 2 triples. Ross would be the guy to add for threes, and Powell would be the guy that I would add over Ross in pretty much every situation, assuming that Carroll actually misses any time For the Sixers, TJ McConnell was back. This is what we talk about. Another example, out indefinitely. TJ McConnell was out indefinitely. He missed one game, and that's don't get scared when you hear the term indefinitely. He missed one game, and I was a little bit concerned because Sergio Rodriguez had lost his starting job due to injury. So I thought, okay, he started, maybe he can hold it. They wouldn't, and he played well in that game, so maybe they want to keep Sergio starting. But no, TJ was back. TJ was starting. 10, 5, and 8 for McConnell with a steal. Absolutely worth owning. Now, the news came out about Ben Simmons today that he will be looking to return after the All-Star break, and they said looking at early March. So we're talking 6 weeks away for Ben Simmons. You're talking about that being the start, most likely, of your fantasy playoffs. And the dude has, and there's still a rumor that he may not come back at all. You're talking about a guy that's going to be coming back after missing, let me do the maths in my head, four months out with a broken foot. He's not coming in and playing 30 minutes off the bat. It'd probably be a 2-week situation for him maybe to get back to that. And by then, that's 2 rounds of your playoffs done. So stashing Ben Simmons, if you've got an IR spot and no one else eligible for IR, no problem. If you're in a keeper league, no problem. If you're in a league with no IR, it's going to cost you. You might just hold him all the way now until you get to the first round of your playoffs and go, oh, you know what, I can't actually hold him anymore. So what's the point in that? And if you've got him in IR and then someone else becomes IR eligible, it's just the same as having someone on your team. It's the same as having no IR in that case. So yeah, stashing him in that situation is not ideal. So there was rumours that he'd come back on Friday for the Sixers against the Rockets game. That's obviously been quashed by Brett Brown. And now this report by ESPN saying that he won't be back until after All-Star. That's a significant chunk of time still, and that puts it right at fantasy playoffs time. And then we've got to get him back into the groove of things. We've got to get his minutes back up. The Sixers don't really have any incentive to say, all right, you come out and play 35 a night. They just won't do that. That is just not what they do. So there is no, like Embiid's on a minutes restriction for an entire season. This is just not what's going to happen with Simmons. So don't get any sort of hopes up for him this season at all. Bobcov got the big minutes back, so that's encouraging. 36 here, 10, 5, and 2, 2 steals and a block. He'd been losing a few minutes to Timothé Luwawu-Cabarrot, but a nice performance from Bobcov there, while Ersan Ilyasova only played the 24 minutes, but that was enough to score 18 points with 5 boards and 3 triples, and Dario Saric, 8 and 9, but 2 real highlight blocks. And that game was so fun watching the Raptors Sixers. The crowd was so into it. Saric was stuffing guys at the rim. Just ridiculous stuff from these guys. And he has improved significantly, not to the level that he's a 12-team league guy, but he was a guy that you would struggle to own in 18-team league players, the league, through like November and December. But he's definitely elevated above that. Source Castillo started. He played 16 minutes, picked up some very early fouls, and once again, Timothé Luwawu-Cabarrot impressed. Now, he only shot 4 of 6, but he was 4 points, 2 rebounds, and played 17 minutes, had a steal. He's a very, very good mover, and I think he is going to be the player, aside from Embiid, I think he is going to be the player that benefits the most from Simmons returning. His ability to be in the right spot is really good. His ability to move around and create space is good, and Simmons will find that. Simmons will find him in those spots, and I think he is going to benefit significantly. It's not going to have really much impact this season at all, but it is something to watch. I think those guys are going to have a very good chemistry, and I can see them playing alongside each other for a few years to come. He is a guy definitely to watch, but just don't get your hopes up too much for this year. Much like Simmons. The next game we take a look at, it's the Memphis Grizzlies and the Washington Wizards. Zebo had a couple of strong games in a row. This was not one of them. He was 3 of 14 from the field for 6 points with 9 boards in 20 minutes. And in true Zebo style, there were no assists, no steals, and no blocks. I don't think that Zebo is a must-own player, and obviously this doesn't change my opinion on that. While JaMychal Green, he had a big game, 15 and 13 in 34 minutes, and that looks great on the surface. It was 6 of 7 shooting, so he got hot, but just like Zebo, the other day he had a couple of stinkers in a row. So I think both of those guys are great 14-team league guys. They're absolutely fine streaming options to take a punt on someone in a 12-teamer, but I don't think that they should be just anchoring a spot on your roster. Marc Gasol was fantastic, 28 and 7, had a block, but really great percentages there where he went 9 of 16 from the field and 10 of 11 from the line. And Chandler Parsons still stuck on his 19 minutes, 6 and 2 with a 3. Like, he's producing okay, but obviously the minutes are just not enough, and it's really tough to hold him in outside of deep leagues or dynasty keeper scenarios. For the Wizards, they got a big victory here over the Grizzlies, and it was due to the play of Otto Porter, who had 25 points on just 12 shots. He went 9 of 12 from the field, and his increase in efficiency this year has been really fantastic. He hit 6 triples in this one, while Markieff Morris's stellar run continued. 17 and 12 for Markieff, a steal and a block. Now, he wasn't that efficient, but these are still big numbers, and he's putting up rows and rows of big numbers recently. Obviously, a must-own guy. Johnny Wall went 25, 2 and 13, had 2 steals and a block with some good numbers there, while Marcin Gortat continues to have just minuscule usage, 7.6% in this game, 7 points and 11 rebounds in 36 minutes. So the minutes are there. He just doesn't see the ball. He is still a guy you have to own, but the production is just nowhere to be found. While Brad Beal was horrible, 4 of 14 from the field for 12 points. Did have the 4 assists, but it wasn't a great night for Braddles there. Jason Smith chimed in with a 20-minute 8-point cameo, had 3 boards, 2 steals and a block, but we know we just leave him for the deeper leagues, and I am encouraged to see that Tomas Satoransky is back in the rotation on a regular basis. 14 minutes for Satoransky, 2, 3 and 3, and that shouldn't mean much to you now, but the fact that he is in here and he's getting more minutes than Trey Burke means that when Beal goes down, and if Wall goes down at all, Satoransky is now back to being first in line instead of third in line behind Burke and Thornton and McClellan, or fourth in line behind those 3 guys. He's now back to number 1 backup guard off the bench, and that's going to be important if Beal or Wall happen to miss time. Let's move on to the next game. That is Portland and Charlotte. The Blazers, man, they got pumped. 85-107 by the Charlotte Hornets. Only 2 players in double digits, CJ McCollum and Dame Lillard. McCollum had 18 points with 4 steals and a block. The defensive numbers for him have been fantastic this year. Really big surprise and really big improvement. While Dame Lillard went 21, 7 and 6 with a steal and a block. So good numbers from those guys. Both of them were inefficient, but we're seeing McCollum dropping back off now that Lillard's here, and Lillard's season in general I think has been a marginal disappointment. Mason Plumlee had 8 and 10 with 3 blocks, while Al-Farouq Aminu only scored 7 points, but he had 7 boards, he had 2 assists, he had 2 steals, he had 2 blocks. That's obviously very useful, and he should be owned in he should be owned in all 12-team leagues. Mo Harkless, I'm not so sure about at the moment. 9 points in 27 minutes for Mo. He had a 1-1, and he can do that stuff with the defensive numbers, but since Aminu's been back, it's sort of just put a cap on what he can do, and in a 10-team league, I don't think there's really much point in owning Harkless. In a 12-teamer, have a look at your roster, and if you're honest with yourself, he's probably your worst guy, which means that he doesn't need to be there necessarily. But have a look and see how your roster pans out. Alan Crabb was bad. 5 points in 18 minutes for Crabby. And as usual, he did nothing else. No rebounds, no assists. He had a steal. He is very deep league fodder only. We saw the backups in here a lot. Shabazz Napier, Pat Connaughton and Jake Layman, they all played 4 minutes. Let's move on to the Hornets. Roy Hibbert, from being out of the rotation to back, 22 minutes for Hibbert, 16 and 6 with 2 blocks. Probably his best game for the Hornets. Do not get excited about that. While Cody Zeller battled some foul trouble to play only 25 minutes. He went 6 and 10 with a block in that time, Zeller, but he will likely go back to 30 in the next game. Still no Jeremy Lamb, so Michael Kidd Gilchrist played 31 minutes, 9, 5 and 4, but added a steal and 3 blocks. And his numbers have definitely gone up since Bellinelli and now Lamb have been out. He's just not appealing though. He's a 14-team league guy, and there's just nothing to say that he's a must-own guy. Probably Bellinelli's best game since his injury, 13, 5 and 3. He is really just a streamable guy. While Nick Batum had 17, 7 and 7, and Kemba had 23 points with 3 steals. So good nights from the best players on the Hornets. Marv Williams, 8 points, 2 threes, 9 boards. That's fine. But much like when I talked about Harkless, his numbers might say, yeah, you know what, he can be owned. But if you're honest with yourself, he's going to be your worst guy on the roster, and that means that he can be expendable in those sort of situations. Let's move on to the next game, and that is New York Knicks and the Boston Celtics. There was no Kristaps Porzingis, there was no Lance Thomas, there was no Joakim Noah for the Knicks. Now, Porzingis and Noah are both having MRIs on Thursday. Porzingis said that he will look to come back on Saturday, so he's going to miss Thursday's game based on what he said today. And Noah, I would have to assume that he will miss Thursday's game as well. At the moment, I don't have clarification of that, but that's what I would have to assume. So with Noah out, with Porzingis out, Jeff Hornacek.
My name is Jeff.
He got his cock out. He only left it out for 10 minutes in a frustrating turn of events for everybody. Kylie Quinn, as we know, has been putting up huge numbers in limited minutes. We've seen it time and time again, and we've also seen the Hornacek, you're playing well as a backup, here you go, have 8 minutes scenario. Well, now it's moved on to the starters. O'Quinn starts and just doesn't see time. And I can totally understand that Billy Hernan-Gomez was playing well. 17 and 11 for Hernan-Gomez in his 20 minutes, and he has stretches like this. Probably don't need to see 20 minutes of Marshall Plumlee, though. Now, Plumlee was providing some pretty good energy. I grant him that he blocked 2 shots. He went for 5 and 7. But no one needs to see 20 minutes of Marshall Plumlee, do they? Does anybody? I don't think so. And that's where the frustration comes in with Hornacek. Now, the Knicks did get a big win, so I can't be too critical of him here. 117 to 106, the Knicks won. But it's obviously frustrating. We're just as likely to see 28 minutes from O'Quinn in the next game and Hernan-Gomez to be a DNP CD if Noah and Porzingis both miss. We've just got no idea what Hornacek does because he changes his mind every 5 seconds. In this game, Courtney Lee remained off the bench, played 38 minutes, the most he's played basically all season. He had 9, 8 and 7, a very nice all-round performance from Lee. Just leave him for the 14 to 16 team league formats, while Mindaugas Kuzminskas played 29 minutes and he's going to remain starting while Porzingis is out, I'm convinced. 17 and 6 for Kuzminskas, 2 triples and 2 assists. Efficient shooting, and he's been a guy that we've been monitoring over the last couple of weeks as he's seen his numbers rise and he gets more comfortable in the NBA and starts shooting the ball at a better percentage. So he's putting up numbers at a much improved rate. Is he a must-own guy? No. He's not a 12-team league guy, but definitely he's a guy that I would look into a 14-team league situation. I think he's significantly better than Lance Thomas, and I hope that he maintains a lot of his role once Thomas comes back. But 14 to 16-team leagues, I would be definitely looking at Kuzminskas, and he's owned in only 3% of leagues, so he's going to be out and he's going to be around. Big game from Derrick Rose, huge game from Derrick Rose. 30 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, but probably the best part of it is he had 2 steals and 2 blocks. Now we know that Rose just doesn't get steals and he doesn't hit threes. Didn't hit any threes. He didn't even take any threes in this one. But getting those defensive numbers, getting the 10 rebounds, and coming efficiently on 13 of 24 shooting is fantastic from Rose. He has had a much improved season. It's still not a fantastic one by fantasy standards, but it's one that's probably surprised you based on where you drafted him, and he has looked better at times. He still looks horrible at certain times and lacks in those other categories, which does really reduce what he can do. Melo didn't have a great night, 13, 4 and 3 in his 33 minutes. Ronnie Baker started, played 11 minutes, got 5 fouls. Ron Baker. Let's move on to the Celtics. Isaiah Thomas, this is getting crazy now for Isaiah Thomas. 37 minutes for Thomas, 39 points, 5 triples, 2 assists, which is definitely an issue in his game in terms of fantasy anyway. 12 of 25 from the field, 10 of 10 from the line, and another just crazy shooting performance. 38 usage on 66 true shooting. Like, this stuff is just ridiculous, and it keeps happening. He will drop off. I will guarantee that he will not keep up this level of production. It is basically impossible for him to do that. But while it's happening now, you ride with it, and it's much like the Lowry situation I talked about earlier. You sell high if you can get Durant, if you can get Giannis, Harden, Kawhi, Davis, Cousins. You sell high if you can get those guys. You don't sell high if you can get... It's not selling high if you get Kyrie, if you get Kemba, if you get Brook Lopez. That's not selling high. Selling high is getting one of those rock-solid top 7 guys. That's selling high. You probably won't be able to do it, but you never know. You seriously never know what people value things. And I don't like calling people out, but I do like bringing attention to things that are around that I see, just so you can know that sometimes these things exist. There was a post on Reddit about Joel Embiid, and someone posted on their just some breaking news here about Rudy Gay. Kings beat reporter James Ham has just said that they're going to still have an MRI on Rudy Gay, but the diagnosis of a torn Achilles is not in question. So there is absolutely zero doubt that Rudy Gay has a torn Achilles and he is out for the next 12 months. So don't be holding out any hope for Gay and his Achilles, but that news just came through. Now, where was I? What was I talking about just then? Isaiah Thomas? Got to rack my brain now as to where we're at with that. I've completely forgotten. Thank you, James Ham, for your interrupting tweet. Anyway, that I'm sure it will come back to me. That's really frustrating. Jay Crowder, 21 points in 37 minutes. He is on a really supreme hot streak. Oh, no, that's all I was going to... Now, okay, let's go back. On Reddit, it was about Joel Embiid, and someone posted over there, where do you see him going next season was the question. And someone posted, if he's got no restrictions next season, no back-to-backs, he'll probably go in the 5th to 6th round. And of course, I read that, spat my water over the screen. That's not happening. But I highlight this just to say that the valuation that people have on guys can be very, very different. So if you can trade Isaiah Thomas for a top 7 guy, you do it, and you do it automatically. And it's not saying no one would ever do that, because some guy thinks that Joel Embiid is going to be a 6th round player if he has no restrictions. If he's playing 33 a night and playing every game, that he's going to be a 6th round player. That is the sort of thing that happens. All right, so that's what I was trying to get at. Anyway, Jay Crowder, big game. Avery Bradley out again with his Achilles issue, and Brad Stevens thinks that it will cost him more time. It's just a sore Achilles. There's been so many Achilles issues this season in the NBA. So Marcus Smart made the start. You don't like 4 points on 1 of 6 shooting, but you do like 5 assists, you like 2 steals, you like 2 blocks. They're good numbers. He remains a must-own punt field goal percentage player. I was getting pretty excited about Kelly Olynyk, but I always throw the caveats in. Brad Stevens is his coach, so don't expect consistency and don't expect common sense with the front court rotations. Kelly Olynyk played 13 minutes. He had 4 points, 2 rebounds, and 2 assists. This is what Stevens does, and this is the frustrating part. It wasn't that these other guys were playing fantastically. Jordan Mickey did a good job defensively. He had 6 minutes for 2 blocks. Amir Johnson played 18 minutes and went 10-7 with a steal and 2 blocks. Yeah, nice numbers. Jonas Jerebko had 4 points in 16 minutes. Jaylen Brown had 12 points in his 19 minutes. But this is the frustration with Olynyk. And this is why it's always going to be he's going to be a tough guy to own. If you see a progression, which we had seen, like 4 or 5 games in a row, 23 to 24 minutes, hey, maybe it's turning. Let's grab him because the upside's there. And then this sort of shit goes down and you go, well, what's the point? And that is always that's what you always got to remember with guys like Olynyk and Brad Stevens, is that it will continually happen. Al Horford was horrendous with his shooting. 5 points on 14 shots, 2 of 14 from the field. Did have 7 rebounds, did have 10 assists, and had a 1-1. But his shooting has been it's been fairly poor of late. But otherwise, nice production in other areas. Really upped his assists this season, which is probably an unexpected benefit from owning Al Horford this year. Let's move on to the Orlando Magic and the New Orleans Pelicans. The Pelicans smashed the Magic 118 to 98. There was no Evan Fournier again for the Magic, so Jody Meeks started, but then Jody Meeks, he dislocated his thumb, so he lasted just 16 minutes. So that meant we got extra run from Mario Hezonja, who played 18 minutes and went 8-5. Actually, a really good performance from Hezonja. We got 34 minutes out of DJ Augustine, who was horrible. He was 4 of 14 for 10 points. Is Hezonja worth grabbing in 12-team leagues? No, I don't think so. CJ Watson also played 19 minutes. These guys get bumps in like 16-team formats. And I could see Hezonja starting, but Vogel appears to hate him this year. But it was a nice performance here. So could we have CJ Watson starting? Could we have DJ Augustine and Elfrid Payton starting together? Those things are things that could definitely happen, but neither Watson nor Hezonja, nor Augustine would be guys that I'd be looking at in any sort of 12 or maybe even 14-team league format. Serge Ibaka, and this was a blowout, as I mentioned, so minutes were limited for a lot of players. Serge Ibaka, 25 minutes, 11-7 with 5 blocks. He'll take those 5 blocks every day. While Lord Elfrid Payton, he top scored with 14 points and 3 assists. Equal top scorer was Aaron Gordon, so that's the biggest positive out of this game, is that Aaron Gordon and Lord Elfrid Payton top scored. Gordon played 31 minutes and went 14-8-4. Really nice stuff from him. You always want more, but it's good to see a performance like that. While Nick Vucevic had 10-8-5 in his 26 minutes, and Bismack Biyombo 4-7 in 19. For the Pelicans, Drew Holiday, one of his better games. He didn't need to play a huge amount. 14-2-5 in 26 minutes. 5 steals and 2 blocks really gets it done. And Tyreek Evans, he he doesn't need to play big minutes to put up numbers, it appears. 20 minutes, under 20 minutes for Tyreek. 18, 4 and 5, 3 steals and 4 triples. He's as must-own as they come for waiver wire guys. And we hope that when the minutes restriction gets lifted, we're going to see big numbers. Anthony Davis got hurt again, but he came back into the game. It was a hand issue. They x-rayed it. It was fine. He taped it up. He came back out there and played. I've got no explanation why things continually get knocked for him, but he does have good recovery powers. Like he will go down and he'll get smacked out of midair and land on his hip, and it looks like a shit injury. But then he's back the next day, so he might go down easily, but he also gets back up pretty quickly most of the time. And he was back in this game, played 29 minutes and went 21, 14 and 4. But I understand the frustration associated with it. Terry Jones back to 18 minutes. 7 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, and a 111. But if he's going to be left in this role, then you can forget about that for 12-teamers. Eatwan Moore had 9 points in 26 minutes while Bud healed. At least he got back over 20 minutes, Bud. 10 points in 24 minutes, but you can leave him for the 14 to 16 team league formats. All right, let's move on to Milwaukee and Houston. That's the next game that's up. The Rockets got a big victory here as well. Another blowout, lots of blowouts on Wednesday. Yanni, 32, 11, and 6, a 3, a steal, and 3 blocks. Super efficiency, going 13 of 20 from the field. While Mick Beasley with another big night, 24 minutes for Beasley, 14 and 8, 2 threes, and 2 blocks. He's pretty much a 14-team must-add guy at the moment, Beasley, given the way that he's playing and given the role that he is being given consistently. The Jason Kidd front court Mamba is at it again. Greggy Munro, 18 minutes, 2, 4, and 2 with a block. Johnny Henson, 19 minutes, 4 and 5 with a steal and a block. This current infatuation back again with Henson over Munro does nothing to make me think that you want to grab Henson, and it does nothing to make me think you should drop Munro. But it's still frustrating, and again, when dumb shit like this happens, I am glad that the Bucks lose by 20 points as much as I like the Bucks. Munro should be playing more. Henson, Munro's not a good defender. Neither is Henson. Malcolm Brogdon played a lot of minutes, and that's good. 7, 8, and 8. Not a good shooting night, 3 and 12, but he is a must-own guy, while Dellavedova only saw 17 minutes with 5 points. He is clearly just a deeper league sort of a player, while Jabari Parker, not a lot happening for Jabari there, 15 and 7. Jason Terry played 11 minutes, so that's anytime I can celebrate Jason Terry having an 11 trillion, it's better than him getting out there and playing 21 minutes. For the Rockets, Jimmy Harden, 38, 6 and 8, 2 blocks and 4 triples. He's so fun to watch, and there were lots of talk about him being a boring player to watch and the Rockets being frustrating to watch. It's the complete opposite this year. It is just super fun watching Harden. His mastery with dribbling, passing, scoring. He doesn't go to the free throw line as often anymore, and that's obviously improving the watchability of Harden's game, but he is just a master with the ball at the moment. Pat Bev was great as well, 12, 9, and 5, but he did it brilliantly defensively, 3 steals and 2 blocks. Well, we've already talked about the table. Eric Gordon hit 7 triples for his 25 points in 32 minutes. Took a lot of shots, 20 of them in fact, but hit 9, so not a terrible night there. While Ryan Anderson was out again with that illness. As for Capella, he played 11 minutes, and Nene played 10 minutes, as most of those center minutes went to the table, and it is going to be a rotating thing, I reckon, for big chunks of the year. Corey Brewer started, he played 18 minutes and had 2 points. He had 3 steals as well, but yeah, even if he starts, there's nothing to like there. While Sam Dekker played 25 minutes, he got the bulk of those Ryan Anderson minutes, but didn't do much with them. 5 and 5 from Dekker, and his form has dropped after he started off the season in a pretty solid manner. Let's move on to the next game now. It's Atlanta. They took on the Detroit Pistons, and surprisingly, another blowout. The Pistons getting the victory. So there's not a lot to really read into this box score. Minutes were just spread all over the place. The highest minutes total for the Hawks was 27 for Paul Millsap. He had 21, 8, and 4. Dwight Howard played 21 minutes for 4 points with 3 blocks. Dennis Schroeder had 13 points with 6 assists in his 27 minutes. The encouraging thing was I saw 20 minutes of Taurean Prince, and he scored 10 points there, and we had 12 minutes of DeAndre Bembry. Also recently signed Gary Neal played 13 minutes and scored 4 points. Nothing you can really look at here. It does reinforce to me that I don't want Tim Hardaway in standard leagues. 10 points for Timmy in his 19 minutes. Chris Humphries had 13 points. Just a complete mess of a game for the Hawks, really. For the Pistons, it was good for them to get back on the winning track with a big win. No Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, no John Lua. Reggie Jackson had 26, 5, and 4 in 32 minutes. And Reggie Bullock, who started in place of KCP, played 36 minutes and put up a very impressive line, 15, 6 and 4 for Reg. He's still just a deeper league guy because we anticipate KCP being back pretty soon, but that's good to see Bullock actually being able to produce. Same with Stan Johnson, who played 32 minutes and went 7, 4 and 3 with 3 steals. Toby Harris had 19 and 5, and Marcus Morris had 14, 10 and 7, a career high in assists for Marcus Morris there in those 36 minutes. Andre Drummond only played 23 minutes, but still had 17 boards, also just 1 of 6 from the line. They did hack him for stretches of this game, but again, this was a non-competitive game for big stretches of it, so not a lot to really look into and love. Let's move on to the next one, Indiana and Sacramento. For the Pacers, they get the victory, 106-100 on the road. Jeff Teague with the big game.
My name is Jeff.
22, 7 and 11 with 2 steals, and it came on only 6 shots. He was 5 of 6 from the field, and it was just a parade to the line where he went there 11 times and converted all of those, while Paulie George had 24, 4 and 3 in his 42 minutes, and he was efficient as well. Also got a nice little scoring cameo from Al Jefferson, who scored 20 in his 17 minutes. Obviously just a deeper league guy, while Miles Turner had 16 and 5, and that's actually not a bad performance when you're going up against DeMarcus Cousins. Thad Young didn't get much cracking, 8 and 4 in 24 minutes, but 3 steals and 2 blocks obviously works for fantasy. While Monte Ellis had an extended run off the bench. He played 29 minutes. It gave him 2 points. He had 4 boards, 3 assists and 2 steals, and no reason that he should be owned in any 12-team leagues anywhere. For the Kings, we'll talk about Rudy Gay in a sec. Boogie Cousins, 25, 12 and 10, a triple-double with 3 blocks, a steal and a triple here. And Darren Collison played 37 minutes after Ty Lawson was a late scratch. 11, 2 and 9 for Collison with 4 steals in his 37 minutes. He is the pick out of him and Lawson. I still think that they're both a little bit iffy for 12-team leagues, but with the Gay injury, I'm a little bit happier with keeping Collison and thinking he should be owned in all leagues. The Kings also made another change to their starting lineup. They went back old school. Costa Koufos started alongside Aaron Aflalo. Aflalo did his thing, and by that I mean nothing. 11 points with nothing else. And Tolliver was still relatively productive in his 22 minutes, scoring 5 points with 3 rebounds. Costa Koufos had 11 and 4 in his 24 minutes. Now, Tolliver was a guy that you had to grab in 14-team leagues. I don't exactly know what's going to happen now, obviously, with Rudy Gay out, but he's a guy that we'll talk about in a sec. Well, let's get into it, because Gay had a good game as well before he went out, but he's done now, Rudy Gay. And there's a couple of things with Rudy Gay. He has already mentioned that he wants to opt out of his contract. He's got a $14 million player option for next year. He may not opt out, so he could just come back, opt into that, and play another half of season with Sacramento, and then cash in free agency the year after. Yes, Wes Matthews did sign a $70 million deal coming off an Achilles surgery with Dallas, but Gay has that option of getting $14 million and then seeing how it goes from there. So there is obviously some decisions that need to be made. People who worried about drafting Rudy Gay based on trading, obviously he's not being traded. He's still not playing, but these are the things that, if you try and plan things around trade rumors, they don't often go right, and it obviously didn't work out in Gay's favour. But these things don't look. There was apparently he was going to get traded for Cam Payne in the offseason, and then Payne got injured, and now he was going to get traded at the deadline, and now he got injured. So shit just goes wrong all the time. Now, as for Gay, when Gay was out in that stretch through late December, early January, Matt Barnes started the majority of those games. He wasn't fantastic in that time, but he did start the majority of them. If I count them up now, he started eight games in that stretch. Garrett Temple, he started the first 3 of those games that Gay missed, and Barnes started the rest of them. Were they any good in that playing time? They were alright. Barnes had a 20-point game with 5 triples and 8 rebounds. He had a 12, 7 and 5 game. He had a 4, 6 and 6. He had a 10, 5 and 5. He had some okay games. He had some shit ones. He had a 2, 4 and 4. He had a 3, 2 and 2 in limited minutes. Although that was the game that Gay returned, because Gay returned for that one game. He had a 12, 7 and 5 against the Heat, so some decent numbers. As for Temple, in the 3 starts that he had, he scored 20 points in one of them, 17 in the other, and 5 in the other. He dished a lot of assists in those games, but then he went back to the bench and he played 24 minutes, 28 minutes, 26 minutes, and he didn't do a huge amount in that playing time. Now, if we look at these guys and what they did over that time, in that time frame that Gay was out, Temple was the 93rd ranked player, Tolliver was the 121st ranked player, Temple played 30 minutes, Tolliver played 29, and Matty Barnes was the 182nd in 26 minutes. But Temple is not a high producer. He's not a good per minute producer type of a player. We've seen the last 2 weeks he's played 32 minutes a night and he's ranked 160th. I think that Barnes has got the highest upside, to me, no doubt. Like, he was ranked 108th last season, 105th the year before, in under 30 minutes a night. Now, he is obviously a year older, and he has not been the same player this year. But he does have an opportunity. Yeah, Temple is a guy that just sports such a low usage. He doesn't do much assist-wise. He gets maybe a steal a game. He just he doesn't shoot the ball well. There's not a lot to love with him from a fantasy point of view. I think we're going to see, and look, I mean, Caspi's out at the moment, but Caspi can come back and take some of these minutes. I don't think we're going to see a situation where Barnes or Temple or Tolliver or Caspi or any of them are must-own players. You're going to see nights where it's Temple. You're going to see nights when it's, Temple playing the 3 is not an ideal scenario against a lot of teams. You're going to see nights where it's Tolliver. Then they go weird and they try and stretch it out that way. There's no one who stands out as a must-own type of player. You could look at Temple and say, yeah, he was a top 100 guy, Josh, in that time where Gay was out. But I also just don't buy into that as being something that he can maintain long term. He was doing that on 90% shooting from the line, and he's just not that good of a shooter. And he was getting a lot of assists in that time frame as well. If you want to take a flyer on someone, just watch who you're dropping. Temple and Barnes are the two guys that I would look at. I think that Barnes actually does have the higher upside out of the two guys. I think that, but whether he can get the minutes or not remains to be seen. But playing Temple at the 3 seems like somewhat of a scary proposition against lots of teams in the NBA. There's no one who stands out as being an absolute must-grab guy, and no one who I think is really going to swing leagues or anything based on this unfortunate injury. But Barnes started the majority of the games. Temple had the slightly better production, but all in all, it really ends up being somewhat of a wash, I guess. And again, we had Anthony Tolliver in that mix as well, who could be considered ownable. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly how the Kings process this. Look, let's all see how it goes down. But there's no magic ad here. That's not like it's going to be Barnes 100%. It's going to be Temple 100%. It's going to be Tolliver. It's going to be none of that. It's going to be, okay, let's mix and match things. Let's play them 26, 27. Let's play Temple 30, and it's just not going to be enough to have a monster sort of an impact. All right, let's move on to the next. Oh no, on to the next game. Yeah. Oh. Sneezing. All right, the last game of the night. That was the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Golden State Warriors. Russ Westbrook had a quadruple double, including turnovers. 27, 15, and 13 for Russ. 2 steals, 2 blocks. He was horribly inefficient, going 8 of 23 from the field. 10 of 11 from the line is nice, but you shouldn't care about Russ's field goal percentage. Oladipo had a big one too. 23 and 2, but 4 triples, 4 steals, and a block is a huge performance. And after playing like 3 minutes the last time the Thunder played the Warriors, Enes Kanter played 30, and he was productive. 22 and 9. I always think that Kanter can be productive, but whether the coach plays him enough is always the concern. And I had my concerns here, but obviously those concerns weren't shared by Billy Donovan this time around. There was no Steven Adams, as I mentioned. And last game, Joffrey Lavernier played 29 minutes. Kanter played like 22 not last time against the Warriors, in the last game. Lavernier, DNP CD. So trying to work out how coaches run things can be a real pain in the ass. This was a blowout victory for the Warriors. Jeremy Grant started again at center. He had 7 points and 2 blocks. He's not worth an ad, but I am encouraged by the fact that Cam Payne got 25 minutes. In a game where Russ played 35 and Oladipo played 37, Payne played 25. So we saw those guys taking the majority of the guard minutes. Cam Payne had 9, 1, and 4. He had a block and a 3. And I do believe that he has a sneaky chance to be a top 150 guy by the end of the year. But it is going to take a bit of time. But this is the most encouraging thing I've seen from him. If you're in a 16-team league, he should have already been owned already. And he's not, because he's owned in 1% of leagues. I think he should be owned in those leagues. Sabonis struggled, 5 points in 15 minutes for him. For the Warriors, Steph had 24 with 8 assists and 3 steals, and Klay Thompson flew back about an hour before the game and played. He wasn't great, but he was fine given the circumstances, 14, 4 and 3, while Draymond had 12, 11 and 5 with 3 blocks and a steal there. Iggy, nice line for Iguodala, 6, 2 and 5 with 4 steals, but obviously we're leaving Iggy for the 18 to 20 team league scenario as well. Zaza Pachulia had 5 and 6 in his 19 minutes, and as is pretty much always the case with the Warriors, not really very much was happening aside from that. Alright, I'm going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be back to preview the 5 games that we've got coming up on Thursday for DFS.
Now I had a dream of you on that cold September night. I had nothing left to look forward to. I thought you were all I wanted, but I never really knew just what you could do. Never want to leave you 'cause I think it's worth to be alone. Times like this I wonder.
Alright guys, let's look at the perfect DFS lineup, starting with FanDuel. Derrick Rose at 53.5 and Russ at 62.5. At shooting guard, Courtney Lee 31.1 and Giannis Antetokounmpo at 58.2. Small forwards, Marcus Morris went for 36.5 and Durant had 64.4. Power forwards, JaMychal Green at 34.1 and Amir Johnson at 27.4, so a little bit fluky there. And of course, Billy Hernangomez at 30.7 was your center, and that gave you a total of 398.4 for 59,800. Over on DraftKings, Derrick Rose at 57.5, Courtney Lee at 32, Marcus Morris at 39, and JaMychal Green at 37.25. Then we had Billy Hernangomez 33.25, Pat Bevs at 40.25, Kevin Durant at 70, and Russ is at 73.25 for a total of 382.5, and that cost all $50,000. Let's move on to these games. As I said, there are 5 of them to talk about. So we'll start off with the first one, and of course, that is the Phoenix Suns, and they're taking on the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cavs are favored by 11.5. Now, last time these two teams battled, they kept it close, the Suns, and that was enabled some pretty big lines. And this is in Cleveland, so I'm not really sure they're going to be able to do that here. We want to check on the status of 2 players. Kevin Love, who didn't participate fully in practice today for the Cavs, he's questionable with that lower back tightness that caused him to miss the second half of the Warriors game. And Brandon Knight, who's missed the last couple with a wrist problem, he's questionable for this one too. Jared Dudley is probable, but he probably won't play regardless, and Tyson Chandler, who missed last game, is likely to be back after suffering a stomach virus. And also, just a FYI, I hate the term stomach flu, absolutely despise it. It just is not an accurate term whatsoever. So yeah, I just cringe whenever I see it get reported. Oh, he's out with a stomach flu. No, he's not. He had a virus, he had gastroenteritis, he had whatever. He didn't have a stomach flu. That is a phrase that shits me, and it really, really irritates me. But anyway, I just got to get that off my chest. Let's talk about the point guards here. Eric Bledsoe is playing very well at the moment. He's at $8,000 over on FanDuel. He's at a nicer price on DraftKings at $7,700. He's coming off an absolute monster where he dropped 55 points. I think the matchup against Kyrie is obviously a positive one for Eric. I think there's a real chance he gets to 40 here, and at that sort of salary, that's exactly what you want him to do. So I think he's one of the better point guards on this 5-game slate. As for Kyrie at $8,400 on FanDuel, that is, he has not been producing the sort of numbers that you need at that salary, and somehow his salary has jumped by $400 on FanDuel. Really don't understand that. It's jumped by $600 over on DraftKings. To me, he is just a GPP only sort of a player. I'm not really interested in him as a cash game guy. Shooting guards, Devin Booker at $6,400. Yeah, he's been good. This matchup is a very good one for him, but I'm not sure that I'm totally in love with it on FanDuel. I do like it on DraftKings where he sits at $6,200, and obviously you get the 3-point bonus there. But he is He can be tough to rely upon. Been much better lately, but the last game from him, he played 46 minutes, 23 points. That's a horrible return. Half a point a minute is not a good return, and that's because he had no peripheral numbers, and that's why he is a risky play, and I think that he's more of a GPP type of a player. The other shooting guards, you can take a punt on a guy like Iman Shumpert and Kyle Korver. They're both GPP options, but none of the other shooting guards I think are really worth paying attention to. TJ Warren's at 4,500. The encouraging thing with Warren is that he played 31 minutes in the last game. He's at 4,000 on DraftKings. He didn't produce. He only had the 20 points, but at 4,500, that's not far off where he needs to go. This matchup is actually a positive one for him, a marginal positive. But at 4,500, you won't find many better, cheaper small forwards out on the slate. So, GPP option, TJ Warren's there. We know he can go off. We know he can go and drop a 40. So that's something he can look at. PJ Tucker's the other guy you got to look at too, as much as I hate saying it. Earl Watson plays him. He plays in big minutes, and this is a matchup where you can see him playing him significantly big minutes. He's averaged 34 minutes the last 3 times he's played Cleveland. He had 28 points in the last game in 27 minutes. He's at 4,100 PJ, and he's at 3,800 on DraftKings. He's got a real chance to exceed those values, so I think that he is a solid option as well if you're looking for one of those cheap players. He definitely has that value, because I think this is a matchup that Watson is going to want to run him out there as much as possible. As for LeBron James, he is up to 10,800 on DraftKings. He's at 10,500 on FanDuel, and it's pretty expensive. But on a day like this, when there aren't that many high-priced guys around, you might have to stick LeBron in. Now, he is only averaging 39 points over the last 5, which sounds fine, but not when you're spending 10,500. That is the risk associated with using LeBron. There's not many high-priced guys out there, so he might be a guy you have to take a look at. I think he's a little bit better over on DraftKings, but he's still not He's not a strong play on FanDuel, I don't believe, especially with the blowout risk that's associated with this game. If Kevin Love misses, Dickie Jefferson and Channing Frye are likely to get a bump. If Brandon Knight misses, nothing really changes. I should have touched on that a little bit earlier. Kevin Love at 8,300. We don't know if he's going to play. I think the fact that he's questionable at the moment and the fact that the game might be a blowout means that even if he plays, he gets some limited minutes. So that turns me off using Kevin Love. The 7,800 that he's priced out on DraftKings is okay. I just don't really love this situation. This is a gut feel sort of a scenario. Marquise Chris is at 3,700 on FanDuel. He is at 3,200 on DraftKings. The one time he played the Cavs, he dropped 30 points, and he played 33 minutes. That's DraftKings scoring. He had 29 in 33 minutes in FanDuel scoring. There aren't many cheap power forwards out there in this slate who have got upside to go off. So I think that Chris is really a guy that I would look at as a GPP power forward, and I think that he could be that player who at sub 4,000 and sub 3,500 on DraftKings, he goes off and occasionally he plays big minutes, occasionally he plays 18 minutes. Working out the Earl Watson formula is not easy, but I think there's a real opportunity here for Marquise Chris to put up a very impressive fantasy performance, and I'm all aboard him at the moment. In GPPs only, though, of course. A little bit risky in cash. Dragon Bender got more minutes than Chris in the last game, but if we've known anything from Earl Watson, he will play Bender less than Chris at any opportunity, so I'm not really getting too excited here about Dragon, despite him being a minimum salary player.
Bite my shiny metal ass.
Tyson Chandler is at 5,400. We expect him to play, and I think that he's a good option. He's been putting up good numbers, averaging 31. Alex Len is very much out of favour in Phoenix, so we're getting big minutes from Chandler. No issue with him getting to 4,500. DraftKings, it's even better. He's at 4,600 and he's averaging 33 over the last 5. It feels like free money, especially given his last score in the last 5 games has been 29 points. That's his lowest score. And at 4,600, that crushes value. It just feels like free money using him. Yes, the matchup against the Cavs is a negative one, but I feel like you've got so much extra cash to play around with in this matchup that he's a really, really solid option. Tyson Chandler doesn't really do it for me in this one. He doesn't really do it for me in many sort of scenarios, to be honest. Let's move on to Dallas. They're taking on Miami, the 2011 Finals rematch. The Heat are favoured by 1.5, and the total is a disgustingly 197 points. So all that means is we look at this and we just go, yeah, you know what? probably not interested in too much that's happening in this game. It's not a game to stack. It's not a game to target. Well, there is a little bit of value over on the DraftKings side of things, but it's not a fantastic game at all, nor it's going to be a good one to watch, I don't believe. Goran Dragic is at 6,900. He had a nice 39-pointer in the last game. We know by now that Dallas is nightmare for point guards in terms of producing numbers. So that's the risk with using Dragic here. The pace is also a risk. The Heat pace is not high. That's why this game is just so unattractive. But Dragic, he can be considered. I don't really like him over on DraftKings as much. I think he's a better option on FanDuel at 6,900.
Giggity!
But I would restrict him to tournaments most likely. I could see him in cash in certain situations. Tyler Johnson's at 6,100. That feels like a lot. Yeah, he's averaging 31 over the last 3, but at 6,100, you're hoping that he gets to that average, and that's not even taking into account this really bad matchup. So that price is just, it feels just like a stay away. On DraftKings, he's at 5,500. That I can get behind. I would rather use Dragic on FanDuel, and I would rather use Johnson on DraftKings. So obviously, just a little bit different between those two. Darren Williams is at 6,400. He's been putting up solid performances. He's averaging 35 over the last 5. He had 30 in that game against the Bulls. But I still don't think that really means that I want to spend 6,400 on him. He's at 58 on DraftKings, and the same sort of story. I just don't really feel great about using him. I could see it on DraftKings a little bit more than FanDuel, but it's not a standout scenario. Seth Curry has been starting and playing good minutes. He's been a little bit up and down, to be kind. 4,000 points. $4,000. He had 26 points in the last game. I don't really think that his upside is all that high. He can put up 25, 26 point performances. It's not that brilliant. 3,900 on DraftKings. Yeah, that with a 3-point bonus over there, I think helps him, and he becomes a very nice, cheap shooting guard on DraftKings. I don't love him that much on FanDuel. Dion Waiters at 5,300. I think that Dion Waiters is not bad from a cash perspective. He gets you around 25 a night at 5,300. That's not bad. Whereas Wes Matthews at 5,400 is more of a GPP type of a play. Wayne Ellington had a big game in the last one, but that's just pulling stuff out of your ass really to expect him to continue to do that. That's been the pattern of his career. The pencil's at 6,700, and that just screams too high for me. 6,000 on DraftKings is getting a little bit better, especially with a $400 price drop, but I'm still not fully on board using Harrison Barnes at that price tag. The other small forwards are not worth considering. Jimmy Johnson. He's at 6,300. It's a pretty high price for a guy who is Jim Johnson, but he's putting up the numbers, and there is a little bit of value in that price range where he's at, but I think he's a solid guy to look at here. He's at 6,300, as I said. He dropped 35 in the last game. He's averaging 30 over the last 5. I like him better on DraftKings, where he's at 5,900 and he's averaging 33, but I think that he is fine to use on both sides. He's finding a way to put up stats in numerous ways: steals, blocks, assists, rebounds. He scores, he hits threes. He's doing it in multiple different areas. And that's the sort of guy that can help insulate you. If a guy is just totally reliant on one area, scoring, assists, blocks, it makes it hard for him to be a consistent GPP guy, a cash guy. But a guy like Johnson, who can contribute in all areas, it makes him a nice cash guy. And then if he contributes in every area in one game, then it goes through the roof. And that's why I really like James Johnson. Dirk Nowitzki's at 5,700. He's been producing solid numbers at that price. I think that he is fine for cash. Over on DraftKings at 5,900, I'm not as interested in him at that elevated price tag. At centre, Hassan Whiteside's at 8,700. Look, you've got some expensive options at centre. That's another place you can spend your money. Look with a guy like Karl Towns as well. Whiteside is a little bit risky in this scenario, but I still like him. I like him better on DraftKings, where he's at 8,100 rather than FanDuel, but I think that you can consider using him on both sites. All right, let's move on to the next game. Now we're going to talk about, who is it? It is the Washington Wizards and the New York Knicks, both teams coming off a game, so back-to-backs. At this point, I've ruled Kristaps Porzingis out of this one, and Joakim Noah I've got listed as questionable. I do not think that Noah plays. I would be stunned, in fact, if he plays, given he is having that MRI. I just can't see him having an MRI in the morning and them just saying, all right, well, cool, it's negative. You're right to go 5 hours' time. I don't see that being the case. So I would be assuming that Joachim is out. It's going to give us some interesting scenarios, though, no doubt, because what happens with Koch? What happens with Billy? What happens with Marshall Plumlee? Like, what happens in all these scenarios? So there's some weirdness that's going to be going on with this game. Point guards, Derrick Rose at 6,200, really playing quite well at the moment. The John Wall matchup is not ideal, so that makes him a little bit of a scary proposition on FanDuel at 6,200, and DraftKings at 6,400. I'm really not convinced that he is a good option here. I think he's obviously a GPP upside guy, but expecting him to go 50 plus again, I just don't think that's going to work in your favor. As for Johnny Wall, 10,200 on FanDuel. That's an $1,100 price rise. That's getting up there. That's a very, very high price for John Wall, and I just don't have the confidence that he is going to be able to return that value. Now, depending on how you structure your lineup, you might have this cash left over and go, well, how else am I going to spend $10,000? Hey, John Wall's here, maybe this works, and that's absolutely fine, presuming you've got value in other areas. On DraftKings, he's also risen by 1,000, up to 9,600. That is more palatable, and I think that is worth looking at on DraftKings, just not as much of a fan of it over on FanDuel. Brandon Jennings had a good game today. He put up 24. He's at 4,400. I just don't really see much of an upside there with him. Justin Holiday, Bradley Beal. Let's start with Braddles. He's at 7,200. Has really struggled to get anywhere near that in recent times, so he is a no from me. And on DraftKings at 7,000, a little bit better on DraftKings for Beal, but still, I don't think he's in the elite player pool. Courtney Lee also had a big game today. He's at 3,700. Previously, you would have said that Lee has no upside. He showed he's got some upside today, but realistically, over the last 5 years, like, how often has he even shown anything like this? And that's why I'd say don't expect it. The salary is really tempting. You can obviously look at it, but the last game that he came off the bench before this one, he played 20 minutes. So which one is it? 20 minutes? Is it 38 minutes? Hornacek obviously doesn't know what he's doing half the time. There's just so much dysfunction heading across with the Knicks, or just quietly as well. There's that Charlie Rosen article that Mallow got so fed up with, and talking about how Phil wants him out of New York and all that stuff. I read through the article yesterday. There were things in there that were worse than the Mallow article. He went through every Knicks player and had a little spiel on them. Sasha Vujacic. Vujacic needs to play more. He is a knockdown shooter and lockdown defender. Is he? He's not. He's like a 48% true shooting. He's got a PER of 7. He's got a -4 box score plus minus. He's horrible. He shouldn't play more. There's only one player in the league that should play less than Sasha Vujacic, and his name is Meta World Peace, and that's debatable. So that one made me laugh for a start. The second thing is, Kurt Rambis is a defensive mastermind, and I wish I had the exact words in front of me. Oh, you know what? I think I do. Let me bring them out, because they were very humorous. Where are we? Let's read the Vujacic one. Sasha Vujacic needs more playing time. He's a pesky defender, a lights-out long-range bomber, a diligent executor of plays, and an excellent shooter to the young'uns. False. Kurt Rambis certainly knows all there is to know about NBA defense, to say nothing about his other areas of expertise. Huh? This is Kurt Rambis, the worst coach in NBA history, most likely. He shouldn't have a job on any NBA team, let alone be in charge of things. That's another humorous part from this article. Jeff Hornacek is a solid coach. My only biased opinion, your opinion, is that despite Mallow's pouting reluctance, he should have made a firm and full commitment to installing the triangle offense. Cool. So there was the Mallow stuff that got the headlines, but if we're trying to say that this is not coming from Phil Jackson, this guy's coming there, they should just play full triangle. We must get Sasha Vujacic the ball more. Kurt Rambis is a genius. These are things that Phil Jackson wanks over. Like, this is exactly it. It was just a confusing article that made me just shake my head and go, come on, seriously. Where was I? Ron Baker. Did I talk about him? No, I don't need to. Forget about it. Let's talk small forwards. Mindaugas Kuzminskas is at 3,900. Guy's rolling, and that's a good price. I think he's there's no one that's ever a must roster player, but at 3,900 on FanDuel, he's pretty close to it. At 4,500 on DraftKings, I'm not going to be as aggressive and say that there. That's obviously a higher salary. He did have 28 today, but we're expecting more 22, 23, which at 4,500 is probably not getting the job done for Mindaugas. But over on FanDuel, when you're at that price, you're fine. Mallow's at 7,700. Hasn't really got cracking at that price recently, but he's got a good history against Washington. Porzingis is out. That normally results in more usage. I think this is a great pivot option to Mallow. after Derrick Rose went big today. I think that Mallo's got a real chance to put up a big performance here, so I'm definitely fine with using Mallo, cash, and GPPs. Otto Porter at 6,000, no problems with that. I think that he's solid, and you should feel pretty confident about getting 30 out of Otto. For the power forwards, Markieff Morris also crushing it. He's at 6,100. Great matchup for Markieff here. He's been really hard to stop. He's at 6,100 on DraftKings. His projections, they don't love him in this one, but the matchup is a positive, and I would feel pretty good about using Markieff. Jason Smith at minimum salary on DraftKings. He is a real punt. He's a punt option. I don't like him on FanDuel, but on DraftKings at 3,000, he had 18 points today. He's getting some extra minutes. He's averaging 16 over the last 5. That may work. It's a positive matchup for him. The Knicks could very comfortably get blown out here and see some extra playing time for Smith. So he is my off-the-radar sneaky GPP guy that will be owned in 0% of formats. It could very easily not go right. Marcin Gortat at 5,800 has been doing nothing. It's a good matchup for him, but he just doesn't touch the ball enough anymore, so I would look at it as a GPP only sort of a scenario. And Noah, I just don't think he's going to play. Now, what do we do with Kyle O'Quinn and Billy Hernan-Gomez? O'Quinn had 4 points today, Hernan-Gomez had 31. That probably means that Hornacek's going to go 28 minutes of O'Quinn tomorrow, if we assume Noah's out. But obviously both of those guys, Hernan-Gomez and O'Quinn, are GPP only type of plays. There's definite upside for O'Quinn if he gets that role. There's obviously upside for Hernan-Gomez, but we just don't know what Hornacek's going to do, because at this point, honestly, Hornacek doesn't know what Hornacek is going to do with these guys' minutes. He's going to jerk them around, and it's going to make it really tough for us to rely upon them in any sort of DFS perspective. Let's move on to the next game now. We'll talk about the Denver Nuggets and the San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs are favored by 12.5, and the total is 219. This is going to be a real challenge to see if the Nuggets can get their fourth consecutive game with over 125 points scored. We've got some injury news. Wilson Chandler is out due to a death in his family, so best wishes to Wilson and the rest of his family. Darrell Arthur is questionable with leg soreness. Gaz Harris is out. Nick Jokic, the Rooster, Danilo Gallinari, they're both listed as probable with ankle injuries, and DeJounte Murray is probable for the Spurs. So let's talk point guards here. Tone Parker's at 4,700. It's a great matchup for point guards. I think that Parker would only be someone I'd look at it as a GPP type of a guy, and at 5,000 on DraftKings, I don't even think that's all that interesting. Manny Moutier is up to 5,000. Obviously, the Spurs matchup is not fantastic, but he's been playing very well. So I've got no issue with considering Moutier a GPP type of guy, and I'll probably pause at saying cash, but he's been playing very, very well. He's at 47 on DraftKings, same story. I think that there's value to be seen in that as well. Jameer Nelson at 3,700, just a GPP type of guy, but last game we saw him play only 20 minutes, and that could definitely be the case again. Farton Will Barton at shooting guard 5,300. He's going to start. He dropped 42 in the last game. Much like Kuzminskas is almost a no-brainer. I think Barton's almost a no-brainer too. On DraftKings at 6,100, that gives me a fair degree of pause. That's a significant price jump there, and I'm just not sure that he is an absolute lock at that price. I still think that he can be used, and I still think there's value there in a start, but Barton is a notoriously streaky player who has been less streaky this season, no doubt about that, but that is still a big amount to pay for Will Barton. Danny Green is just a GPP player at this at this point in time. The Rooster, Danilo Gallinari, he gets the Kawhi Leonard treatment, which could be a real problem for him, but at 5,900, it's a relatively appealing price, and at 5,400 on DraftKings, even factoring in Kawhi there, I think that there's value at 5,500 for Gallinari. He's coming off a 32-point performance in the last game. Yes, the Lakers are a different scenario to the Spurs, but it shows you've got a little bit of leeway, especially with that $600 price drop that he's just recently gone through. Kawhi's at 9,400. He is killing it at the moment. He's putting up big numbers at high efficiency. He's averaging 46 across his last 3. Love Kawhi at 9,000 on DraftKings as well. No issue with considering Kawhi Leonard a guy to look at. No one on the Nuggets is going to be able to slow him down. Power forwards, Ken Fareed at 5,600 is another big opportunity for Fareed to put up a 30-point plus guy, much like Barton and Kuzminskas. These are the guys that I reckon I'll be looking to start my lineups with, build with those guys, and then move out and fill in the gaps around that. They're some of the higher value players that are on this slate, I believe. Same thing on DraftKings for Ken. Jokic is now up to 9,400. This is pushing the friendship. He's at $900 up on where he was last time. Yeah, the guy's ridiculous. He's averaging 51 across the last 3. He's playing the Spurs. I do think that he's fantastic. He's at 87 on DraftKings, which is, I'd probably be okay with it on DraftKings, but 94 on FanDuel. It's feeling like it's GPP only, and it's feeling like it's a cash fade situation. Bad matchup, huge price rise. He's ridiculously good, and if there's anyone that can push through it, it's him. But shit, that's just a lot of cash to spend on Jokic. I'm not feeling that 100%. At 7,800 for LaMarcus Aldridge, I'm not really feeling that either. He's just struggled to get to that sort of level a lot of times this year. At 67 on DraftKings, I'm okay with that. At center, Pau Gasol 6,100. This is the ultimate contrarian punt option. He was horrible in the last game. I still don't feel that 6,100 is a good option. But on DraftKings at 5,100, that is a great punt option. It got a fantastic matchup against the Nuggets. It could be a blowout. He might see 20 minutes. There's a huge risk associated with Pau Gasol because he's only averaging 23 points over the last 5. But when you come down to 5,100, then I can get behind using Pau as a DFS option in this situation. Let's move on to the next game now. That is the last game of the night, and that is the Minnesota Timberwolves. They're taking on the Los Angeles Clippers, the Chris Paul-less Los Angeles Clippers. The Clippers are favored by 2, and the total is 205. We don't know if Wes Johnson will play. He missed the last game due to paternity. Obviously, Paul and Blake Griffin are both out. Let's start with the point guards. We start with Ray Felton. He's at 5,500 on FanDuel, so they've responded and they've said, well, Felton's going to get in the minutes. Here's the preemptive price rise. He's risen by $1,300. So that puts somewhat of a dent in your expectations because we don't exactly know what's going to happen with these guys. But with Blake out, I feel really confident that both Austin Rivers and Ray Felton are going to play 32, 33 minutes. Felton's at 48 on DraftKings. I think there's great value. I think there's fantastic value for him on DraftKings. Not quite as much on FanDuel, but still, he's going to be a great option player. As for Rivers at 5,600, that's a $1,200 price rise on FanDuel as well. I'm not sure I feel all that great about that. He's been putting up some decent numbers, but not enough to really justify 5,600 in that scenario. And at 5,200 on DraftKings, I feel a little bit better about it, but I would prefer Felton over Rivers on this slate of games with those respective prices. Rick Rubio at 6,700. He's killing it at the moment. Now he doesn't have Chris Paul to worry about in this matchup. At 6,700, this could be a really big situation for Rubio. I still have an element of risk associated with him, but without Chris Paul taking on Felton, this could be another big Rick Rubio game, so no issue with considering him an option. At 6,600 on DraftKings, that's probably pushing it a little bit much. That's quite a high price over on that format for a guy that doesn't really benefit from the 3-point bonus. Jamal Crawford is minimum salary on FanDuel. Somebody's going to have to take up some of the slack, and Crawford is going to have to at some point. Now, he is averaging 7 points over the last 3 games. He's at minimum salary, so I think he's a great GPP guy, but it's really hard in cash. At 42 on DraftKings, still just a GPP guy. It's going to be a real test in the 6th Man of the Year voting this year. If Jamal Crawford gets a single vote, that person should be immediately banished from voting for anything. I can pretty much guarantee that he will get votes in the 6th Man of the Year award, which is a disgrace. Zach LaVine at 6,200. I don't feel comfortable with that price. It is a good matchup. The Clippers are allowing some extra points to shooting guards, but I don't really feel great about using Zach LaVine at 6,200. At 6,000 on DraftKings, I feel a little bit better, but it's still not a brilliant scenario. And JJ Redick at 5,200, I feel pretty good about Redick at 5,200. I think there's not a huge amount of upside, but he feels like a solid cash play at that price tag. Small forward, Wigo at 6,800. Well, at this point, he is just a GPP guy. There's no way that you can rely upon him in cash, and I don't really feel this as being a great scenario for him, so he's not a strong play in this one, and the Clippers small forwards are not interesting. You could take a punt on Shabazz Muhammad, who has had a couple of nice scoring games off the bench at minimum salary. I wouldn't be getting overly invested in it. While Gorgie Jeng, after a string of bad games, has put up some strong ones now. He had 38 in the last game. He's at 5,700, Gorgie, and he's at 53 on DraftKings. No issue with considering him a guy that he should be able to get 28 or 29 points, which is obviously enough to return value at that sort of a salary. Mo Spates is the other guy you want to look at 4,500. Spates dropped 44 on DraftKings in the last game. He's averaging 25 across his last 5, and there's obviously upside there, but it's GPP only type of upside. DeAndre Jordan, I think, will struggle without Chris Paul. He's at 8,200. That is not an amount of money that I want to spend. But on the other side, 10,100 for Karl Anthony Towns. I think he is a decent play. So you got Jordan, you got Towns, you got Whiteside, who are all high-priced centers on this slate. Towns is probably the one I want to go for in majority of circumstances. All right, that is all for today's show. Let's now move on and talk about the picks of the day, starting with FanDuel. Patty Mills at 3,600, Ray Felton at 55, and Eric Bledsoe at 8,000. Shooting guard Jamal Crawford 35, Farton Will Barton at 53. Small forwards Kuzminskas is at 39, Otto Porter at 6,000, and Kawhi is at 9,400. At power forward, Marquise Chris 37, Ken Farid at 56, and Jokic at 94. And at center, O'Quinn 49, Chandler at 54, and Towns at 10-1. Obviously, O'Quinn is based on GPP only punt if Noah is out. DraftKings, Felton 48, Bledsoe 77, and Johnny Wall 96. Shooting guard Seth Curry 39, Devin Booker 62. Small forward PJ Tucker 38, the Roosters at 54, and Kawhi is at 9,000. At power forward, Jason Smith 3,000, Ken Farid 52, and Karl Towns at 9,900. And at centre, Tyson Chandler 46, Pau Gasol 51, and Hassan Whiteside 8,100. Let's go to the Australian sites. Moneyball, Ray Felton 45, Dragic at 69, and Bledsoe at 84. Shooting guards, Barton's at 49 and Redikus at 52. Small forward is Kuzminskas at minimum 35. Jimmy Johnson at 62 and Kawhi's at 91. The power forward, Marquise Chris 36. Ken Farid at 51 and Jokic is at 82. And at centre, O'Quinn 43, Chandler 54 and Towns 99. On draft stars, Felton is 6,450. Derrick Rose is 10,450 and Bledsoe is 14,1. At shooting guard, Austin Rivers 7,550. Will Barton 10,000 and Kawhi 16,150. Small forward Kuzminskas at 5,000, James Johnson 9,900, and LeBron at 19,750. Power forward Mo Spates 6,550, Ken Farid at 88, and Mellows at 14,900. And at centre, O'Quinn at 66, Chandler at 87, and Whiteside at 15,950. Also, big shout out to Doris Burke, who gave the entire Locked On Podcast Network a shout out on national ESPN TV today, especially Locked On Rockets with Ben Dubose. If you want to hear anything about the Rockets, Ben has everything covered. He had an interview with Daryl Morey the other day over there, and he got a specific shout out from Doris on ESPN. So that's fantastic stuff from Ben and fantastic for the whole network. So you want to hear anything about the NBA, go and listen to the Locked On Podcast Network. We've got ESPN endorsement now. Go and check out what's happening on the rest of the network. Subscribe to this podcast on iTunes and leave a review and rate the show if you like it. It really does mean a lot if you could do that. And follow me on Twitter at redrock_bball. We are done here, guys. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Dario Saric.